Any Yale people here? I know this is interesting to ask at the University of New Mexico, but any Yale people here? Any background with Yale? A couple? Did anybody, before we get going, did anybody happen to see a recent article in the Atlantic Cities about the revitalization of New Haven under the tutelage of the now retiring Yale president Richard Levin? If anyone's ever spent time in New Haven back in the 80s, I grew up in New England, so back to the 70s, I mean, blight, the word was probably invented there. And the turnaround has been absolutely extraordinary from an economic development standpoint. It's an incredible thing. And I think, I just want to dovetail with Mayor Berry was saying, they looked at hard things and they had a hard cycle of about 5 or 6 years, and they beat the crap out of each other for a long time until a vision came out of that. And once everybody got sort of 80% agreement, everybody marched forward, and it's just been an incredible turnaround. So I just want to say that to support what our mayor has been saying, and I really appreciate that. So let's get to a couple of things real quick. New Mexico State University, let's start there. There's a couple of interesting things we can talk about in regards to economic development. But what I want to start with is just a sort of a simple premise. With your school, Madam President, what are the changes that you're seeing in student needs as it comes to when it regards to economic development? Meaning, what are you seeing that people want to do with their lives when students come in? What are they telling the school that this is where I want to go? And how are you responding to some of those changes? Because it's happening awfully quickly right now.
Well, Jean, is this on?
Go ahead, keep talking. They'll probably figure it out in the back there.
Well, Jean, thank you.
Perhaps not.
Thank you for that introduction. And I first want to thank Frank for inviting us here, both Dan Lopez and I. Dan was down on our campus yesterday for the Domenici Institute conference. I want to thank Governor Carruthers for his great leadership there. We provided a great educational experience for our students there and for many students at the University of New Mexico as well. I'm finding that when students come to Mexico State University, many of them are seeking the same thing I sought as an undergraduate when I came to the University of Michigan. And that is a full educational experience that'll allow them to be prepared for a changing landscape. And that really means a college education that trains them to be critical thinkers, that allows them to understand basic concepts in the arts, in the sciences, in the humanities, and in the social sciences, and that provides an opportunity for them to apply those experiences elsewhere. One of the great challenges I think we have as a modern land-grant university, and whenever I use that term land-grant, I realize that it always has a second meaning in New Mexico because of the great Spanish land-grants that are here. But as a land-grant university established with the Morrill Act, which was, of course, signed by President Lincoln in 1862, is to completely regenerate that notion of outreach that is part of the land-grant tradition. That means when our students come to our school, they not only learn theoretical and applied research in the classrooms or learn to expand their artistic endeavors, but they have an opportunity to apply them in the real world, because the entire mission of the land-grant university is for students to apply their skills in the real world. So what our students are looking for when they come to New Mexico State University is a nurturing environment that will help them become critical thinkers, understand how to intersect with the business world and with the economy, and give them an experience to actually have that practical experience before they leave the university. One of the things we're very proud to say about New Mexico State University graduates, our employers tell us they're extremely well prepared for their workforce. And that's because they've had experiences in the classroom and through internships and elsewhere that make them prepared to be ready for work on day one. And that's what we're finding that our students are continuously telling us. They're also, I think, very concerned about uncertainty. They're over-preparing themselves in some ways. Gary and I were having a little conversation on the plane as we came in. What is it that is inspiring students to not only have one major nowadays, but two majors, in some cases 3 majors, 4 majors. I actually, at one school where I was prior to here, ran into a student who had 5 majors. And I think what they're trying to do is to prepare themselves for any contingency. And our job is to guide them to feel confident and prepared to live in a land of uncertainty. And that's the world we live in today.
Thank you. Let's see if that one works. Go ahead, Dr. Lopez. Yeah, there you go. Okay. Same question, if you would. What are you seeing from your perspective about what students are needing to be in our economy? And what are they telling you?
Well, our students at New Mexico Tech, because it's a rather focused mission of the school as a STEM institution, is primarily they're seeking to be trained in order to not only enter the workforce, but a whole host of students are really interested in starting their own business. And as a matter of fact, because we have the kind of environment that we do, and we have quasi-businesses related to the university under the Research Park Act, we've been able to incorporate the students through internships and ongoing research in these units, that they really have a feel and have a desire to become part of the business community. We have one student, for example, that established Keynes, which is a cybersecurity company, started with a few $1,000s that we were able to help him with. And today, he's bringing in revenues about $3 million. He's grown the company that size in just a matter of a few years. He's in 4 or 5 states. So students see those examples, and that leads them to think in terms of becoming business people and not just preparing for the job market to work for someone else. We do have a number of students that are very focused and interested in pursuing graduate degrees. Those students are more interested in making sure that they learn the basic skills required to go into research and transfer to other institutions, which is helpful to have being able to go to other institutions and get a different experience, a different perspective, create a different network. So our students, I think, primarily want to make sure that they have the basic skills in math, science, and engineering in order to be able to compete, then create and innovate. And that's what I teach a class once a semester, so I get to interact with students an awful lot. And they're very honest. The other thing is, I think the students don't quite understand the relationship between their training and the real world. And one of the challenges that we have at New Mexico Tech, we have some very well-trained students in a very specific area, but sometimes I worry that they don't connect enough with the social sciences, with the other things that are required in order to live in this very, very complex world. The final thing that I think our students really enjoy and pursue is they know they live in a global entity, a global economy. A lot of our students do summer internships abroad, and that gives them a world perspective. And I think that is going to be very helpful, and I think we need to encourage it more because we're no longer insular. It's a global market, and you can't get away from it. So I think the students get a sense of that, and that's why they're pursuing a lot of different opportunities during their summertime. Instead of going to work, those that can afford it, we're able to support some of them. So I think the final thing I would say on that is clearly they have great aspirations, they have great hope, even in this environment of uncertainty. There's still that excitement that students portray as they look forward to their future. So I know it's easy to dwell on the negative, but I can tell you when you deal with these young students and the things that they're doing, you know there's a lot of hope for the future, and it's not as dire as we would like to believe.
I feel better. All right. Actually, I do. That was impactful. And Dr. Lopez, honestly, you know, I've heard you make a lot of talks over the years. I've never heard you talk about a student-run company in billing and like economic development. Do you think that's part of the new dynamic of being a university president, is being able to talk about those things credibly now, about business, about opportunity and things like that, as opposed to just research and things like that?
Well, you know, clearly, there's two reasons for that. Number one, you can't escape it. And secondly, resources at the state level are what they are. I think the state puts a great effort forward, but you just simply can't have enough public sector money in order to do the things that you need to do. New Mexico has this Research Park Act that's a great opportunity. We spun out a number of companies. I know New Mexico State has too, and so has UNM. And getting the students involved in that and being able to tie them in with the business community gives them a real sense of what they can do. And the final thing I would say, the mayor offered that even if you're not in Albuquerque, I'm going to bring my cybersecurity guy to visit with him, because he has his company is located in Albuquerque. So I think we've got to make sure that the mayor knows who he is and the things that he's doing. But yes, I get excited. I get excited talking about intellectual ideas, but I also get excited about talking the practical side of it.
There you go, absolutely. Dr. Frank, it's interesting, just looking out this window, the diversity of students that you have to serve here is just a fantastically daunting assignment. And so this idea that we're talking about here of the possibility of creating entrepreneurs at every level who are participating vigorously in the churn of the economy of New Mexico. What's your sense of what you're hearing from students, and where do they want to go here? Are they telling you directly, I want to stay here, I want to plant a flag, I want to build a business, I want to do things, I want to cash out of a business, I want to find venture capital money. What are you hearing about people that want to stay here, and how are you serving them at this point?
We hear a little bit of everything from students. There's some that say, I want to stay here, I want to build a life here. There's some that want to get skills and go out to the big world, and then they want to come back, and they know they want to do that. So, you know, there's some of all here, and what we think we should be doing is creating the opportunities so that New Mexico is robust enough to serve all of them. At the end of the day, it's not just about our entering freshmen that we're as interested in this. We're as interested in this for our research environment, so that our graduate programs for the graduate students, as they work with faculty and they create ideas, and they're a little bit more mature with their life, as they create these enterprises and work with faculty, and they begin to spin things that are really right there, ready to happen, and our faculty create ideas, and they can attract students to come into the state that want to build enterprises. That's something that's a little more present. And so that's maybe the more active part of this in the present.
Sure. Yeah, I wrote a piece, as you know, in the Alibi a little bit ago about international students and your desire to increase the number of international students. We go back to Madam President at the end there, Ms. Couture, that we talked a little bit on the side about this. People would be surprised that the number of international students that you host at your university are on a par with here at the University of New Mexico. A lot of folks are surprised by that. But I've been getting beat up after writing that article. It's a tricky thing. I didn't realize that the idea of international students, in your view, what does a more vigorous international student body either do or don't do for helping with research initiatives, for getting graduate students a more vigorous experience and spending some of those experiences out in the free market? Does this help your university, having more international students?
It absolutely does, and it also helps our students who come from New Mexico. We know that our students have to be prepared now, as Dan and Bob have been talking about, for a global economy. They also have to be prepared for working in local companies that are in fact globally situated. Mm-hmm. I mean, look at our pecan industry, for instance, in New Mexico. We're experiencing an unusual growth period in the exportation of pecans from New Mexico. We're now the largest pecan exporter. And who's buying our pecans? China. And what does that mean for students who are working for these local companies? They could be rising to the top potentially in companies that are going to be engaging in exports globally, and they need to be able to feel comfortable in that environment. We also find, of course, that to be competitive in terms of research, we have to get the best graduate students from everywhere. One of our challenges right now is that we're not getting enough graduate students from our own Native American population. We aren't having enough of our students come through our public schools interested in science, technology, engineering, and math. New Mexico State University has done a great deal to help with that. We bring 1,700 school teachers to our campus every year to help upgrade their science, technology, and math skills so that our students in the grade schools and high schools will feel more inclined to come into our engineering school, into our physics department, etc. But without those graduates from America, we're importing many of them from other countries. A number of them are coming from China. I recently read an article in the Chronicle of Higher Education that predicts over the next 10 years, India is going to far outweigh China as the greatest exporter of graduate students to America. In fact, I'll be making a trip to India later this fall, primarily to make connections with some 8 Indian institutions. So we think international recruitment is important so that our students have the sense of a global a workplace by virtue of interacting with international students. We also need to import that talent for our graduate school programs, and we're also in many ways going to be importing school students here to our universities simply as a way of keeping our universities sound over a period of decreasing high school graduates in the state of New Mexico, which is occurring over the next few years and will only be creepingly, shall I say, increasing over the next 10 years. So in some ways, having exporting or importing students from other states and also internationally is part of our way of maintaining a good university population and maintaining the enrollment health of our universities.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to skip Dr. Lopez. I keep calling you Dr. Lopez. President Lopez and Dr. Frank, I've got an oddball question for you. Here's one of those from the streets kind of a thing regarding the film business. Mayor Berry, oh, he's gone, mentioned the film business. Maybe he's still here. I can think of at least a dozen kids who left this state because they were film students because there was not a graduate program for film work in this state. I'm talking, the last 3 or 4 years, 5 years maybe. Those kind of things can be sort of a difficult, not sort of, but it's a difficult commitment to build a brand new graduate program. When you look around the university, your early time here, are you seeing opportunities with graduate programs that might be a little underutilized now? Not to call anybody out, certainly don't want to put you in that spot, but you know what I'm saying. Are there opportunities you're seeing here at the University of New Mexico for this?
The 2 biggest opportunities, I would say, for us, the first that we've talked about in many settings is public health. We have a public health program, Dr. Roth over in the Health Science Center, and they run several public health programs. We run an MPH, but we don't have a college of public health. New Mexico as a state faces a myriad of public health programs. New Mexico State runs some public health programs. We've had a series of conversations about a statewide effort in public health with a college of public health that has a collaborated effort with New Mexico State. So we will be rolling out, I believe, a formal proposal to build a college of public health that has some coordinated programs with NMSU. Mm-hmm. With regard to film, I think film is a second effort that I believe we should grow. We've been approached informally about the opportunities of creating a program that has particularly a Hispanic, some sort of Hispanic effort, because there are really no programs that have that subspecialty. All of South America is sort of begging for programs that have that specialty. So we're going to explore that in the near future. So I'm very interested in that with what's going on in New Mexico. It's on my list of things to do. Chowkey and I have had a conversation about it, but I haven't even talked to the dean about it. So, we need to explore it, but I think that's an area that begs exploration. Now, whether the college is interested in the faculty I don't know, but it's certainly something I want to have a conversation about. Sure. Because of New Mexico's growth in this area. So there's 2 or 3 areas that you just have to look at and say, boy, New Mexico's doing things there. There's opportunity here. Why haven't we done more in that area? So those would be 2 areas that I think are I want to hear more from the faculty in those schools.
Sure.
Public health conversation, I have had several conversations. The film one, I haven't gotten very far in.
President Lopez, again, from a graduate student point of view, and same questions, have you made some changes, or do you see opportunities for new endeavors in your place as well?
And clearly, you know, you have evolving needs in the business community and the kinds of technology that's required. But one of the problems we have, of course, in New Mexico, it's very difficult to start a new program. You know, we've lost 20% of our funding over the last 3.5 years. And so you're in a constrained environment, but that still doesn't allow us to just simply say we can't do it. So what we're trying to do is to engage foreign countries in helping us start these new initiatives. For example, PetroChina has a program with us. We have an exchange arrangement, and they pay for the full ride for their students to come to our institution, undergraduate, and as well as graduate students. But what we're trying to do with that is find defined areas in the energy field, because that's what China is most concerned about right now, is how is it going to meet its energy needs over the future. So we're working with them on that opportunity. With India, I've been in India 4 different times now over the last several years. We have an initiative in cybersecurity, and we're trying to create that into an institute rather than just the academic work that we do in that area. So I think you have to begin to look beyond the state for that kind of support, and there's no criticism for of what the New Mexico does for higher education. It does an awful lot. We just simply don't have the resources. And then thirdly, I think by creating your own companies under the Research Park Act, you really have an opportunity to create revenue streams where you don't have to depend to the same degree upon the state or even the federal government. The only problem that we worry about that as we increase these revenue streams, that someone might take away the incentive and say, well, we don't need to fund you, you're making your own money. And that's a delicate balance that we have to deal with all the time.
You and everybody else, right? We're doing great. Don't need you anymore. We're right on the number on 10:15. These days are hard to stay on track, but we have a pretty exciting guest who's going to be speaking here in a little bit, and we're right at 10:15. But I want to thank our presidents for sharing. I think we met some criteria that the mayor laid out and some tough things that need to be said, and I realize even the international student thing is a very prickly thing for a lot of folks, so appreciate the honesty from all 3 of you. So thank you very, very much for your efforts today. Thank you.